Today I'm going to read to you the first chapter from the book Letters from the Lighthouse, which is written by Emma Carroll. If you're in year 6, we read the first couple of pages of this book earlier this year, but I'm going to read the whole chapter so you get to find out a bit more about what happens. And if you like it, you might like to search up this book yourself and read the rest of it. I've chosen it today because on Friday we're celebrating 75 years since the end of World War II, and this book was written, it's based during World War II, so you get to learn a little bit more about what it was like at that time if you read it. The first chapter is called Keep Calm and Carry On. We were halfway through the news when the air raid started. It was a Friday in January. We were at the Picture Palace for the 6 p.m. showing of The Mark of Zorro. All month the Luftwaffe had been attacking us, their bombs falling on London like pennies from a jar. So the fact that they couldn't hold off for just a few measly hours made me hate the Germans that little bit more. The cinema trip had been my sister Suki's idea, as most things were. We were all in need of cheering up that evening. After the tea we'd just eaten at home, it was a wonder we were still alive. It's like brains, Cliff, my 8-year-old brother said, lifting the pan lid to show us. It was probably only minced meat and potatoes, but you never knew with Mum's dinners, especially the ones you had to reheat when she was working late. And Cliff relished gory details, being the sort who'd pick scabs off his knee just to see what was underneath. Well, you never get scabby knees, Olive, he once said to me, like it was the biggest character flaw in the world. The truth was, I preferred reading books to running about in the street. I didn't see it as a weakness either. But we had to eat the horrid supper, of course. No one chucked food away with a war on, not even stuff that resembled brains. You simply pinched your nose and swallowed hard, then gulped down a glass of water. Afterwards, Suki, being the eldest and in charge, said we deserved a trip out. She'd already seen the film last week with a friend. It's the cat's pajamas. You'll both love it, she gushed, as we went around the house, closing the blackout curtains. Then to me, teasingly, cheer up, it's going to be fun. People were always telling me that I had a serious face, because I was dark and thoughtful looking like my dad. What they really meant was I wasn't as pretty as Suki. And I didn't mind because I was proud of my big sister, not jealous. She was just as marvellous on the inside. Everyone seemed to think so. Is that better? I beamed up at Suki so she could tell how thrilled I was to be going out, especially with her. We didn't see nearly enough of her anymore. She recently got a pen pal and acted mysteriously when letters postmarked Devon arrived addressed to her. We'd all guessed who she was writing to. Our next door neighbour, Gloria, had a younger sister called Queenie, who was 19 and lived in Devon. Having a pen pal was, according to Suki, all the rage. And like she was with anything new, Suki threw herself into it, kicking off her office shoes each night after work, then disappearing to her room to write. It wasn't the same as when we'd sent letters to Dad, where we each got to add our own little line on the official blue army paper. Suki shut her door on us. These were her letters, hers and Queenie's. I often wondered what they had to say to each other that was so private and took up so much time. Once we'd got our coats and grabbed our gas masks from where they hung in the hallway, we were ready for the cinema. It was a cold, damp evening, and we were all done up in woolly hats and scarves. Cliff's mittens, on string threaded through his coat, dangled limp at the end of his sleeves, and he flapped them like wings to make us laugh. Such was my excitement, I didn't think to ask why Suki was buttoning up Mum's best green checked coat rather than her own. She'd done her hair different too, curled like a film star's, and was wearing post-box red lipstick. It made her look older than 17 and rather like Mum, the Mum before Dad died, who'd styled her hair and worn makeup and who could argue for England. By the time we reached the Picture Palace, the lights were already dimming. We'd only just found our seats, row K, plush velvet that prickled the back of your knees, when the great maroon curtains swung apart with a squeak. First up was the newsreel. Every film show started like this, with 5 minutes of news from home and abroad. It was all very upbeat, with a proper English voice telling us everything would be all right, even if the film footage showed bomb sites and battlefields. I watched eagerly, chin in hand, as the big white titles and the word Pathé filled the screen. Suki, though, leapt to her feet. "Stay here," she whispered to us. "If I'm not back in 2 minutes, meet me in the foyer when the film's over." Just like that, she disappeared. "She needs the laugh," Cliff said knowingly. "That supper's given her grief." "You're disgusting, you are," I replied, not taking my eyes from the newsreel. The footage was of men in RAF uniforms walking across an airfield. Immediately, it made me think of Dad. In August last year, we'd had a telegram from the War Office telling us Dad's plane had been shot down over France. 6 long months had passed, of every day hearing someone in my family crying, and Mum getting sadder and thinner. I couldn't sleep through a whole night anymore. Often, I barely slept at all. "Look for the light," Dad used to say when things were difficult. I did try. He'd died for his country, people said. He was a hero. Watching the news helped me believe this was true, and as I listened to what a mightily fine job our boys were doing, I could feel myself filling up with pride. Tonight's news switched from RAF men to a city somewhere abroad. I didn't catch where. The footage showed hungry-looking people queuing for food, flanked either side by soldiers. There was snow on the ground. The people in line wore star-shaped badges on their coats. Watching, I began to feel uncomfortable instead of proud. The Pathé News voice, jolly and brisk, jarred with what I was seeing. These people weren't just hungry, but scared. I could tell by their faces how desperate they were, and it made me horribly guilty for the fuss we'd made about our supper. Abruptly, the film stopped. The light came up. I blinked at the announcement on the screen. "Air raid in progress. Please leave the theatre immediately. Head to the nearest shelter." "Blast it," I said, reaching for my coat and gas mask. "Come on, Cliff. We'd better find Suki." People began to leave, though not very quickly. All around us, seats thudded as they flipped upright. Coats were shaken out, hats pinned in place. There was a fair bit of complaining going on too. "Should we ask for our money back?" asked Cliff. "What?" I was still half thinking of those poor people in the newsreel. We'll ask Suki. Keep hold of my hand." Weaving through the crowds, we headed for the foyer. It was then the seriousness of our situation sank in. Beginning to worry, I told myself this was no different from any other raid, and they were happening almost every day now. Most of the action was down near the docks, on Fairfoot Road, where we lived. They'd been more of an annoyance, forcing you out of bed in the middle of the night and into the freezing cold air raid shelter. In the foyer, the lights were off. All I could see were the outlines of the front doors and the cash desk just inside. Already the space was filling up with people, but our sister wasn't one of them. She can't still be in the lab. Cliff's hand felt sticky in mine. She's probably powdering her nose, I said, with a confidence I wasn't feeling. You've seen how glammed up she is tonight. She is the dead spit of Mum. She's got her best coat on, that's why. I tapped my foot anxiously. Oh, come on, Suki. As the last few people came out into the foyer, the mood seemed to change. People were hurrying, jostling into those already making their way out. Stop pushing, a man shouted like he was in charge. We'll get you all out, just slow down. Holding Cliff's hand even tighter, I wasn't sure what to do. Stay and wait for Suki, or go with everyone else to the nearest shelter. Someone was shining a torch at the floor to help guide people's feet. Then that went out too. A woman screamed, and though no one else joined in, you could feel the panic building. I took a deep breath, tried to keep calm. Stay here, Cliff. I'm going to find. A hand came down heavily on my shoulder. You lassie, you laddie. It was the man in charge. What you dithering here for? I tried to explain. My sister's in the toilet. I've just checked the labs. Ain't nobody left inside but us, sweetheart. The second voice was a woman's. Two sets of hands steered us towards the door. Before I could shrug them off, we were out on the pavement. The noises, the smells of burning hit me at once. I felt a jolt of pure, cold fear. Up in the sky, searchlight beams crisscrossed the darkness. Already I could hear the faint crack of our guns as the German aircraft got closer and fought the urge to cover my head protectively with my arms. I don't like it, Olive, Cliff muttered. I didn't either. And until we found Suki, I was the big sister, the responsible one. That was pretty alarming too. Don't worry, I told him. A stupid thing to say, but it was all I could think of. Suki's probably waiting for us in the shelter. We hurried down the street after the last few stragglers. By now the roads were almost deserted. On the corner, an air raid warden waved frantically, the white stripes of his uniform dimly visible in the blackout. Hurry up, you lot, he shouted. What are you waiting for? Christmas? Still holding Cliff's hand, I crossed the road. Thankfully, there in front of us was the tube station, busy with men, women, a few little children who were heading through the entrance with packets of sandwiches and pillows under their arm. Moving amongst the crowd was a woman's Royal Voluntary Service person in her navy blue uniform, hurrying people inside. Come on, you two, she said, seeing Cliff and me on our own without a grown-up. I was glad to have an adult take charge. There's going to be a cake and board games laid on tonight. It'll be quite a party down there. Cliff, liking the sound of it, reached out to take her hand. In doing so, he let go of mine. He was only a few paces ahead of me, going down the steps with the nice WRVS lady. I just happened to glance behind at a sound, a sense, something. There was Suki, looking around in panic. The relief made my legs go weak. Suki! I yelled, waving madly. Over here! She was running away from the shelter, and fast too, faster than I'd ever seen her run before, her arms pumping like pistons. She didn't turn or slow down. I don't think she even heard me. The air raid warden was yelling now. Bomb incoming! Get down! He threw himself onto the pavement. I wasn't quick enough. The telltale whistling came near. An eerie silence. Then a whump as the bomb hit just a few 100 yards away. The ground rocked underneath me. Air was sucked from my chest, making me gasp and stagger backwards, though somehow I stayed on my feet. Glass smashed, bricks fell, planes droned onwards. Everything swirled dizzily together. For a moment, I didn't know which way the sky was. As the dust cleared, my stunned brain did too. 20 yards or so up ahead was my sister. She was limping slightly, with one of her shoes missing, but still rapidly disappearing down the street. "Suki!" I cried out in frustration. "Wait, we're here!" She was searching for us, I was certain, and knowing her, she wouldn't think to keep herself safe. She'd stay out here, not giving up until she found us. This was what terrified me. Cliff would be all right in the shelter with the WRVS lady. What mattered was getting hold of Suki. Sidestepping the air raid warden as he got unsteadily to his feet, I ran after my sister. The warden shouted something. I didn't hear what. "Suki, slow down!" I cried, gas mask box bouncing at my hip. "Suki, slow down!" She was too far ahead. A silly random thought came to me of how nice her hair still looked as it swung against the green of Mum's coat. Then, panic. I'd never catch up with her. I'd a stitch in my side, and even hobbling with one shoe, she was still too quick for me. This part of the road had already been badly hit. The air was thick with brick dust and smoke, making me cough horribly. The road full of potholes was lined either side with blackened, shadowy shop fronts. Smashed glass from blown-out windows scrunched beneath my feet, and there was water everywhere, gushing past my feet. My ears were ringing. I felt lightheaded too, as if everything was unreal, like I was watching myself in a film. Still, the planes kept coming. Whoosh! Silence. You could count the beats between. Then, thud, as a bomb hit. I was angry at my own feeble legs for not going any faster, but eventually I had to stop. Doubling over, I gasped for breath. Up ahead at last, Suki was slowing down too. Thank goodness. It was then I saw why. Emerging from an alleyway was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with slicked black hair, wearing a Macintosh belted tight around his middle. He looked wet though. Wet through, like he'd waded through a river to get here. Suki went right up to him and shook his hand. I stopped in the middle of the street, confused. What was she doing? They were talking now. It didn't look like a normal chat about the weather either, because their heads were close together and the man kept glancing behind him. He gave Suki a piece of paper before taking her hand and squeezing it in both of his. Was she out here searching for us then? It didn't look that way. All I knew was she'd left us in a hurry, and this was where she'd gone. Not to the toilet or to the tube station, but to meet a young man. It was probably why she got glammed up in the first place. I didn't know whether to laugh or burst into tears. "Suki!" I yelled. She spun round. A strange look flitted over her face as the man shrank back into the shadows. Suki hobbled towards me, shaking her head. "You shouldn't have followed me." She sounded furious. Frightened. It made me scared too. I grabbed onto her coat sleeve now. Now I'd found her, I wasn't letting go. As more planes droned overhead, she glanced worriedly at the sky. "Oh hell, get down!" A terrific whump pitched me forwards on my knees. All round I heard cracking sounds as windows bent inwards. Another bomb hit with a thump. Something heavy was falling nearby. I cowered down, too terrified to look. A minute passed, or it might have been an hour. I was too disorientated to be sure. When I did lift my head to look around, the street was full of glass and water. A burst main soaked everything like a downpour. Suki was nowhere to be seen. The ringing in my ears was deafening. Where the shop fronts had been before was now just a heap of smoking rubble. I tried to stand, only suddenly there was nothing to stand on. The air filled with screaming and a horrid smell like burning hair. The sky flashed brilliant white. I felt myself lift up and up, like I'd never stop. There was no air to breathe. Then I was falling down again, very hard and very fast. I don't remember the landing